What if one of the most celebrated royal births in modern history was nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion? For years the world watched Prince Harry and Meghan Markle paint a story of Archie's arrival as a tale of triumph, privacy and defiance against the rigid structures of the palace. We were told a story of a mother protecting her child from the prying eyes of the world, but now that narrative is being dismantled piece by piece. The whispers that once lived only in the darkest corners of the internet have officially entered the mainstream media domain, and the questions being asked are as chilling as they are persistent. It sounds fake, doesn't it? The mere suggestion that a royal pregnancy could be staged feels like the plot of a psychological thriller, yet voices are rising loud, determined and armed with what they claim are receipts from accusations of digital manipulation and the use of artificial intelligence to much darker theories regarding surrogacy. The scandal has reached a boiling point. This isn't just about a couple wanting privacy, it is about the potential for absolute media manipulation on a global scale. At the center of this firestorm is a growing chorus of critics, including prominent figures like Candace Owens, who have pointed out glaring contradictions that are becoming impossible to ignore when you look at the official timeline provided by the couple themselves, especially the accounts found within Harry's own memoir. The math simply does not add up. We're talking about medical claims that defy the laws of biology and recovery periods that have left experienced obstetricians and nurses shaking their heads in disbelief. Why would anyone lie about the birth of a child? It is a question that leads down a rabbit hole of secrecy, and it's to gentle protection. If even a small part of this narrative doesn't hold up under intense scrutiny, it raises a terrifying question. What exactly was the royal family hiding, and why were they so desperate to keep the truth behind closed hospital doors? The trust between the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and the millions of people who celebrated their journey may have been compromised from day one. As we begin this deep dive, see past the glossy magazine covers and the emotional interviews. We're going to break down the evidence piece by piece. We will examine the impossible recovery times, the conflicting explanations given to the press, and the strange anomalies reported by hospital insiders. This crisis will not die down until the era few audible truth comes out. Prepare yourself, because what we uncover next might change the way you see this royal story forever. This is not just a gossip column story. It is a breakdown of a potential web of contradictions that is growing harder to ignore by the second. If you thought you knew the story of Archie's birth, think again. The reality may be far more bizarre than the fairy tale we were sold back in May of 2019. To understand why the world is questioning the legitimacy of this royal arrival, we must move past the emotional rhetoric and look at the cold, hard medical facts as presented by the couple themselves. When Prince Harry released his memoir, he likely intended to provide a raw and intimate look into the birth of his first son. Instead, he provided a roadmap of inconsistencies that medical professionals have found nearly impossible to reconcile with reality. This is where the fairy tale begins to crumble under the weight of biological science and standard hospital protocol. The first major red flag that is left doctors and experienced mothers scratching their heads is this specific claim regarding the use of epidurals. In the narrative, it is mentioned that Meghan received not one but 2 epidurals during her labor. To the average reader, this might sound like a minor detail of a difficult birth. However, to anyone familiar with anesthesiology, this statement is baffling. An epidural is not a simple injection like a flu shot that you receive in multiple doses. It is a sophisticated procedure involving the insertion of a catheter into the epidural space near the spinal cord to provide a continuous flow of pain relief. Once that catheter is in place, the dosage is adjusted through the line. The idea of having to separate epidurals implies that the first one failed so significantly that the entire invasive process had to be repeated from scratch. If such a rare and complicated medical event occurred, it would fundamentally change the recovery timeline. Reinserting a spinal catheter is not only risky, but signifies a labor that is trending toward complications. Yet in the story we're told this supposedly had no impact on the speed of their departure. Furthermore, an epidural leaves the lower half of the body numb for a significant period. Standard medical practice requires that a patient be monitored until they regain full sensation and can move independently, which typically takes several hours after the medication is stopped. The claim that she could endure 2 of these procedures and still be ready to walk out the door almost immediately is a biological anomaly that defies explanation. This leads us to the most staggering inconsistency in the entire account: the 2-hour discharge. According to the timeline presented in the memoir, the couple was back at their home, settled and resting within 2 hours of the birth. This claim isn't just unusual. Well, it is virtually unheard of in any modern medical facility, let alone a high-end private hospital like the Portland in London. Even in the most uncomplicated natural births, without any medication, hospitals insist on a period of observation that lasts significantly longer than 120 minutes. Doctors must monitor the mother for postpartum hemorrhage to ensure her vital signs are stable and verify that she can perform basic bodily functions. Simultaneously, the newborn must undergo a series of mandatory checks. A pediatrician must verify the baby's breathing, heart rate, and temperature stability. There is paperwork to be signed, discharge instructions to be given, and the logistical reality of getting a newborn into a car seat for the first time to suggest that all of this, the birth, the recovery from 2 epidurals, the medical clearing of both mother and child, and the administrative exit happened in the span of 2 hours, is to suggest a medical miracle that has never been documented in the history of the Portland Hospital beyond the walls of the hospital. We must consider the laws of geography and traffic. The Portland Hospital is located in the heart of central London, specifically in the Mary Lou Bone area. Their residence at the time, Frogmore Cottage, is located in Windsor. On a perfect day with no traffic, that drive takes at least 45 to 60 minutes when you factor in the security detail, the no-air city of driving a newborn baby with extreme caution, and the inevitable congestion of London streets. The math becomes even more suspicious. If they were home and settled within 2 hours, it implies they spent less than 60 minutes in the hospital post-delivery. This timeline is so compressed that it borders on the physically impossible. It suggests a level of haste that would be medically reckless for any doctor to authorize. Furthermore, we must address the claims of health complications that Meghan herself has alluded to in various interviews. At different points there have been whispers of preeclampsia, or at least the high risk of it. Preeclampsia is a life-threatening condition characterized by high blood pressure that requires intensive monitoring for days after delivery, as the risk of seizures or stroke remains high even after the baby is born. If there was even a hint of such a complication, no licensed physician on this planet would have allowed a discharge within 2 hours. To do so would be a catastrophic violation of medical ethics and safety protocols. So why does the narrative contain the specific jarring details? If you were telling a true story, the medical facts would naturally align with standard practice. When the details don't match how human bodies actually work, it suggests that the story was being constructed by someone who didn't fully understand medical procedures they were describing. Critics argue that these embellishments are added to make the story seem more dramatic or to emphasize Meghan's supposed resilience. But instead of creating a portrait of a strong woman, it has created a portrait of a narrative that lacks a foundation in reality. When you weigh the 2 epidurals against the 2-hour discharge and add the lengthy commute to Windsor, you aren't looking at a lucky birth story, you're looking at all logistical impossibility. These are not minor he said, she said discrepancies. These are fundamental contradictions regarding how medicine is practiced and how the human body recovers from the trauma of childbirth. Experienced mothers know that you don't just hop up and go home 2 hours after your spine was numbed and your body was pushed to its absolute limit. This medical inconsistency is the crack in the dam that has allowed the larger surrogacy scandal to flood into the mainstream. It forces us to ask a very uncomfortable question. If they are willing to provide a timeline that is medically impossible, what else about this birth has been fabricated? Was this entire account a smokescreen designed to hide the fact that the birthday didn't happen in that hospital at all, or perhaps that it didn't happen in the way we were told? As we move into the next chapter of this investigation, we will see that the confusion in the hospital room was only the beginning. The way the press was handled, the conflicting stories told to the public, and the breaking of centuries-old royal protocols suggest that the secrecy wasn't just about privacy, it was about protecting a secret that could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. The medical math doesn't add up. And as any investigator will tell you, when the math is wrong, the story is usually a lie. The medical anomalies were only the beginning of what many now consider a masterclass in public deception. To understand the gravity of the situation, one must look at how the arrival of Archie Harrison was presented to the world, or rather how the world was systematically misled during those critical hours in early May of 2019. For centuries, the British monarchy has operated like a Swiss watch when it comes to royal births. There is a tradition, a rhythm, and a set of protocols designed to ensure transparency and stability for the nation. But when it came to the Duchess of Sussex, the watch didn't just stop, it started running backward. The first major fracture in the official story appeared in the timing of the birth announcement itself. On that Monday morning, the global press was on high alert at approximately 2 in the afternoon. Buckingham Palace really. The official statement declaring that the Duchess of Sussex had gone into labour. For the millions of fans and journalists waiting outside the palace gates and across the globe the excitement was palpable. However, the reality behind the scenes was far different. It was later revealed that Archie had actually been born at 5:26 that morning, nearly 9 hours before the palace even ended. Now she was in labor. This was not a simple delay or a minor administrative error. In the world of high-stakes royal communications, a 9-hour gap between a birth and an announcement of starting labor is an eternity. It suggests a deliberate attempt to create a window of time where the couple could operate entirely outside the view of the public and the tradition. No press pull. Why would they lead the world to believe she was still in the throes of labor when the child was already swaddled at home? This level of disinformation doesn't just happen by accident. It requires a coordinated effort between the couple and their communications team to feed a false narrative to the global media. The confusion only deepened when Meghan herself began offering various explanations for why the traditional protocol was abandoned. Throughout the following years, the narrative shifted multiple times. In one version of the story, the secrecy was framed as a desperate attempt to protect her privacy and the safety of her newborn child. In another account, the explanation pivoted toward medical complications that supposedly made a traditional hospital steps appearance impossible, and in yet a third version the blame was shifted toward the palace machine, claiming that the couple was forced into these odd arrangements by an uncooperative institution. When a person tells the truth, the story remains consistent. When a story is being fabricated or hidden, the details begin to morph to fit the current audience. These three conflicting versions of the press notification didn't just irritate royal reporters, they undermined the credibility of the entire institution. Seasoned journalists who had covered royal births for decades admitted that they had never seen such a chaotic and contradictory series of events. Some reporters were told the Duchess was at home, while others were led to believe she was already at the hospital. This intentional fog of war served one purpose: to ensure that no one could verify the actual circumstances of the birth as it was happening. Perhaps the most jarring piece of evidence regarding the performative nature of this birth came from the couple's own high-budget documentary series. In a scene that has since gone viral, skeptics' footage is shown of Meghan in what appears to be a hospital setting, supposedly in the middle of labor, dancing and talking with her husband. For any woman who has experienced the reality of childbirth, especially one involving the two epidurals, Harry claimed in his book, this scene feels utterly staged. If a patient is receiving high-level pain management near their final cord, they are physically incapable of such movement. Furthermore, the very act of filming such a moment raises troubling questions. Most parents are focused on the health of the mother and child during labor, yet here was a couple ensuring they had high-definition related content for a future media deal. This suggests that the birth was being treated not as a private medical event, but as a production. A set of scenes to be curated and released later to shape public perception. Critics argue that if she was healthy enough to perform for a camera, the claims of exhaustion and medical necessity for secrecy begin to fall apart. It reinforces the idea that what we were seeing was a curated version of motherhood rather than the reality of it. This pattern of secrecy and contradiction didn't just spark curiosity, it ignited a fire of suspicion that continues to burn years later. When the official notice of birth was finally placed on the traditional gold and easel outside Buckingham Palace, observers noticed another strange detail. The document lacked the signatures of the doctors who supposedly attended the birth. For every other royal birth in living memory, the names of the medical professionals are a matter of public record, providing a layer of accountability and verification. By omitting these names, the couple once again removed any possibility for independent confirmation of the facts. The media charade surrounding Archie's birth has created a lasting legacy of mistrust. By choosing to manipulate the timeline, provide conflicting reasons for their choices, and release behind-the-scenes footage that defies medical logic, Harry and Meghan have left themselves vulnerable to the very theories they claim to despise. In the age of instant information, you cannot tell the world one thing while the facts point to another and expect to maintain the public confidence. The question remains, what was so sensitive about the reality of that day that it required a 9-hour deception and a series of shifting excuses? If the birth was straightforward and traditional, there would be no need for this complex web of contradictions. The secrecy was so intense that it felt as though they were hiding something far more difficult than a simple desire for privacy. As the pressure from royal insiders and media critics like Candace Owens grows, the palace finds itself caught in the middle of a crisis of integrity. The trust between the monarchy and the public is built on a foundation of truth, and when that foundation is chipped away by media manipulation, the entire structure begins to lean We are now seeing the consequences of a narrative that was built on sand as the tide of scrutiny continues to rise, revealing the gaps that no amount of glossy PR can fill. As the official story began to show its first cracks, the investigation moved from the public stage into the quiet clinical corridors of the Portland hospital. For every polished royal announcement, there is a small army of staff, nurses, porters, administrators, and security guards who witnessed the reality behind the scenes. In the case of Archie's birth, the whispers coming from these anonymous insiders have been nothing short of explosive, while the Duke and Duchess of Sussex painted a picture of a high-stakes secret mission to the hospital. Employees at the facility have quietly pointed out that many of the details simply do not match the physical layout or the daily operations of the building. One of the most peculiar claims found in Harry's memoir involves a supposed secret elevator used to whisk the couple away from prying eyes. According to longtime employees of the Portland, while the hospital is certainly discreet and years to the world's elite, it is not a fortress out of a spy novel. Several staff members have noted that there is no hidden transport system that resembles the one described by the prince. Instead, the hospital operates with standard, albeit private, service elevators and corridors. Too many. This detail feels like a cinematic embellishment, added to inject a sense of Mission Impossible drama into a story that may have been missing its core truth. But the inconsistency didn't stop with the architecture. Harry's account of ordering a large volume of late-night food while Meghan was in labor also raised eyebrows. Former staff members pointed out that while the Portland offers a high-end menu, the logistics of a royal secure detail, allowing a random delivery or a massive gourmet feast during a supposedly top-secret high-risk labor, are highly questionable. These small, perhaps seemingly insignificant lies about food and elevators act as glitches in the matrix. They suggest that the storyteller is building a world from imagination rather than memory. This is where the voice of Candace Owens becomes a focal point of the mainstream conversation. Owens, known for her sharp and often polarizing critiques, was among the first major media figures to point out that the couple's attempt to appear related was actually their undoing. She famously zeroed in on the 10-second clip from their documentary showing Meghan dancing in the hospital. Owens argued that this wasn't just a cute moment, it was a performance. She pointed out the inherent contradiction of a woman who claims to be undergoing an invasive, painful medical event with two epidurals suddenly having the energy and physical capability to film a working video for a future Netflix deal. To Owens and many of her followers, this was the smoking gun of authenticity. Or the lack thereof. It suggested that Meghan was playing the role of a mother in labor rather than actually being one beyond the hospital walls. The digital age has allowed thousands of amateur investigators to scrutinize every frame of Meghan's pregnancy. This has led to the controversial but persistent moon bump theory. Critics have compiled hundreds of hours or footage that they claim show impossible physical anomalies. They point to instances where the